All right, I believe we have quorum. We have some folks that will be signing in as soon as they can. So we'll go ahead in the interest of time to go ahead and begin the meeting. So I call the meeting to order at 1:04 p.m. And then Karen, if you can switch Jocelyn over to a presenter as well. Thank you. All right, our agenda. Welcome, everybody. It's been 2 months since we all saw each other last. I hope that you've had a great summer and that you're rested and ready to get into the business of this work. So I am Jennifer Rodriguez, for friends who have not been on the board meeting calls before or who are viewing for the first time. We're just going to go around really quickly and I'll have Karen do the roll call. We do have folks that are sitting for other folks. So if Karen calls a current board member, just chime in and say, I am sitting for that person, just so she has it for her record keeping later. All right, Karen, if you can go ahead and begin the roll.
Hey, Jen Rodriguez. Here. And someone is sitting in for Kristen Basega, correct?
Jocelyn Delancey is sitting in.
All right. And Elsa is going to be a little late, you said. All right. Right. Tiffany Cowett. We'll circle back. Jennifer Delaney.
Hello, everyone. I'm here.
Thank you. Sarah Larford Simons.
Good afternoon. I'm here.
Good afternoon. Thank you. Jenny Graves.
Good afternoon. This is Jennifer Benevento. I'm sitting for Jenny today.
Thank you. Margaret Gustafson.
Here. Thanks, Karen.
You're welcome. Dr. Mel Horton.
She might be joining a little bit late.
A little late, okay. And Malia C. for Shannon Merriman.
Here.
Thank you. Patrice McCarthy.
Present.
Thank you. Dr. Catherine Rowe.
Present.
Thank you. Bob Sartoris. And Cynthia Sonic Moyano.
Present.
Thank you.
So hopefully Sal will join a little bit later to be Hamish's person for the meeting. And you were able to send over that request.
Right now.
Okay, thank you. All right, so let's go right into it. So we have a virtual meeting. As of Friday, there was no public participation submitted to the email that Karen monitors. Has there been any since Friday, Karen?
Nothing. No.
No. Okay.
No.
So that's the portion of our public participation. Thank you, Karen.
You're welcome.
Announcements from the board administrator. Karen, do you have any announcements for the board?
Yes, just a follow up on the proposed regulations that the board is putting forward. PR 2026-009, Code of Professional Responsibility for Educators. The notice of intent has been posted and the 30-day public comment period began on August 4th, 2026. Once that period has ended, the next step would be to review the comments submitted by the public, if any. And if the board chooses to respond after reviewing, then the board's response will be uploaded to the e-regulations website. The very next step after that process is ended, this proposed regulation, will be forwarded to the AG for legal sufficiency review. PR 2026-011 is currently under review at the Office of the Governor at OTG, and all other proposed regulations are under review at the Office of Policy and Management currently. So those are my updates. You're welcome.
Thank you, Karen. I'll actually be doing an updated review as part of the presentation this morning of the process after SBE to give the board a clear understanding of what the next steps are in this regulation process. So thank you very much for that.
You're welcome. All right.
All right, announcements from myself. I'm just going to kind of just go through the you received the note from Tong about just giving an update on the working groups. We did receive a query as to how the working groups are functioning, how they were established, and where there are opportunities for public participation. And I'll go over that as we go through the process of the update of how this kind of moves through the system. Tong did give me an update today that he will be able to get us a full updated roster, because they're still working with some content specific groups that they're establishing of who is on each one of the working groups, who's on those rosters for both EPP programming and content areas, to post on the webpage to ensure that everybody has a clear understanding of who is working on them. They are working in consultation with CPRL and the core working group, and the core working group is made up from our board of Dr. Rowe, Dean Horton, Jen Delaney, and Kristen Abisega. And Kristen works as a liaison with our lawyer from the Potomac group, Emma. And from there, that work goes out, and they are working in consultation. They're not making any specific rulemaking yet. That's the part of the board. They'll kind of come to people, take all that information, put a presentation together, and bring it forward to us for us to deliberate on and discuss. And so the public has opportunity at multiple spaces to speak to the regulations and the guidance that's being created. But I will go through that process when I show you the updated additional steps that happen after regulations get put into the system as well. In addition to that, I'm scheduling a meeting with the legislator to kind of go over the priorities that we've established. Also, the two reports that we had approved for Section 12B and Section 14, we were informed that we don't have to officially submit those, that we just have to go through the process of reviewing the data and having those conversations, which we have had. That being said, Karen is going to be working with the webmaster to set up an additional list reports, including that in there, so the public has access to the reports, whether they have to be submitted to the AG or not, to ensure the public has full transparency on those outside of the meetings that we already have, and posting to each meeting agenda, if that makes sense. Does anyone have any questions on those things? Right, seeing none, I'll move on. So education committee update is really, as stated before, scheduling a meeting. We'll talk more about that later as we talk about our next steps going into September, and when we should be inviting the legislators to come out and listen to our proposals and advocate for the things that we feel strongly about. LPDC and SBE, we are on the LPDC agenda for September, which means that we will also be on the SBE agenda for October for a couple of the legislative priorities that we still have, which was included in the update of the proposals tracker. So you'll have access to those there that we've already approved or moved forward. In addition to that, anything that comes out of this meeting that we think needs to move forward to LPDC, I believe that we still have a window to submit those to ensure that they're on the LPDC September agenda as well. Workforce connections, Shannon is not here today, but I'm not sure, did she leave anything, Malia, for you to kind of share with the group about the workforce connections work?
No, she did not. So I'm going to pass for this meeting.
Perfect. We'll have her on the agenda for next time then. Thank you.
Yep.
And then the Every Kid Counts, I believe quite a few of the board members have been involved in those subgroups and conversations related to MathCon and the work that they're doing. I think there's like 3 subgroups. So if anyone wants to share, since Hamish is not here, as to what we've been discussing, or it's kind of just trying to figure out priorities for each one of the subgroups at this point, I believe. And it has to do around professional development. It has to do around potential endorsement and funding. All right, projects. I submitted the update from CPRL. I don't believe that we submitted it to the web page though, so let me just double check. No, I don't. So I can go ahead and read it so the public has the information there. Or actually, I can just have the webmaster upload it. And I'll just state or reference that just in the interest of time so we can move through because we have a very packed agenda that we need to get to. So if anyone has any issue with that, please let me know now. Otherwise, we'll just kind of have that posted to the webpage for the public. All right. So then we have on deck birth to grade 3 certification standards and guidelines, an update from Paige. She's on the line, and Ryan, I believe, too, right? So I will hand that off to you. Is there anything that you need presented, or do you have presenting rights to kind of show anything, or are we just discussing?
Just talking through.
Yeah.
All right, sounds good. Perfect, thank you.
Hi, everybody. It's Paige here. I'll do just a quick overview, and then Ryan will round out what we want to update you on just for our process. We have continued to, there's the language. We've been working through the guidelines and as they also connect to the core work. And then most specifically and recently, really looking at our field-based clinical experiences. It's been vetted. We've been vetting that with OEC, SDE, and of course the stakeholders with ECEC. And what is, I guess, what's important to us and what we've put in the language is that we're really honoring the birth to grade 3 ages, developmental place, and settings. And so for the clinical work, there is a parallel, what I would say classic student teaching that it looks recognizable across all the endorsements or most of them. And then a pre-KK integrated field-based practicum requirement, but that is supervised so that it is a learning and application opportunity for the candidates for this certification, and also infant toddler hours for the developmental grounding and experience, which can or cannot, may or may not be attached to a course. That's just a quick high-level overview. It feels important to us because we're in the process, but not exactly the same as the process, and we span outside of the typical public school building, that we want to make sure we're keeping our process well and keeping you informed. Ryan has been sitting on the elementary team as well, so I'll pass to Ryan for other highlights, updates, and then of course we're happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Paige. And thanks everybody. Happy summer. I just wanted to talk a little bit through the collaborative process that's been going on, as Paige mentioned. So we've been really fortunate to be working with ECEC as a stakeholder group throughout all of this development work for not only the regulations, but now the checklist and guidance. So as Paige mentioned, we've been able to connect with the Office of Early Childhood and SDE regularly. We were very lucky a couple weeks back to also work with Birth to 3 at the Office of Early Childhood. So we had a great collaborative meeting there just to make sure that there was alignment, given that this new certification has the expanded age and grade range. We just wanted to do our due diligence and make sure that we were valuing the entire age range, that we were getting Birth to 3 input, so that we had strong input on the infant toddler all the way through pre-K and K, and then into the grade levels, because we know this certification is going to be a bit complex, you know, covering that wide developmental span, but also the mix of early intervention at the early childhood level, along with special education in grades 1 through 3 classrooms in public school settings. We are also have gotten on CPRL's radar to have a meeting with the core working group, since this is not a necessarily a sunset, but it is actually a brand new certification. So we just want to honor the process and make sure that there is strong alignment with what I've been seeing in my overlap in the elementary working group, but mainly with the overlap with the core pieces that are being evaluated and developed by the core working group. We want to make sure that we include all aspects of that core, and that, you know, in reciprocity, that the core group gets to see what is coming out of this brand new certification. So that's just kind of where we're at. And we think it's really important. We heard from the board last spring that, there would be sort of a reconvening of the work of all the content area working groups with all the great work that the core working group has done. So we want to ensure that that happens before a final presentation of the board of this new early childhood certification. So thanks. And as Paige said, we're grateful to all of you, and we're happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. And I appreciate the working with CEPRL and the other working groups to ensure that continuity in across all levels, and that those guidelines look either very similar or are structured in such a way that's similar. So thank you for your work around that. Does anyone have any questions for either Paige or for Ryan? All right. Doesn't look like we have any questions on deck. Thank you very much for giving us an update. We look forward to seeing you at the September meeting and having some contact before then to see where we're at.
Sounds good. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you so much for the time. Happy summer.
All right. Thank you. All right. So next on our agenda is we're moving right into presentations. So I am going to share, before I get started though, Karen, were you able to change Sal over to an attendee?
I changed them to a presenter, yes.
Or presenter, I'm sorry, yes, from attendee to presenter. Thank you. All right, I'm going to go ahead and attempt to share my screen. Let's see how this works today. All right. Everyone able to see that clearly? Do I need to make it bigger? Okay, perfect. So let's go ahead and ground ourselves in our mission to modernize and align educator preparation and certification to attract and retain effective, diverse professionals for Connecticut's public schools. As we grow together in this work, these pillars give us a foundation to return to, even in challenging conversations. With the support of our board administrator, we will help ensure we stay grounded in this mission. So with that spirit of collaboration, consensus, and decorum, let's begin, always keeping our educators, schools, and students at the center of what we do. So quick updates on our statutory obligations. You've seen these slides before that we have completed. Most recent, this was updated to show July of 2027 because the legislation did change to extend it by a year, and we are very thankful that they did. This slide is very familiar to you. This is the one that we've gone over on our proposals to SBE timeline or process. The next one is going to kind of speak to what Karen was talking about earlier. Give everybody a quick second to take a look in case they've not seen this before. So following our proposals that are approved, they go to the Legislative Policy Development Committee, then they go to the State Board of Education. From there, once they've been approved, we recognize, because the batches had different regulations from different parts of the reg system, we organized them into each part to be more uniform and also ensure the themes were similar across the batch. And then I shared that with Karen. Karen begins the e-reg system on the back end, where she is responsible for entering in a fiscal note, small business impact statement, and then the proposed regulations version. If once it's officially entered into the system, a tracking number is generated, which you saw on that regs tracker organizer that I had shared with the board. And anyone who didn't receive that, it's also on the our webpage for this meeting, the updated ones. Then it gets submitted to OPM and OTG, as Karen had talked about earlier. OPM approves, then OTG gets it and approves or sends it back if there's formatting issues or anything like that needs to be addressed. The board administrator then creates a notice of intent, and that goes through an internal State Board of Education process of vetting it through legal. It is sponsored. All of these are sponsored by the State Board of Education. The notice of intent is sponsored by the State Board of Education in collaboration with our board as the sponsoring agency for these things, because we sort of fall underneath the State Board of Education. So they review them. OTG then reviews them. If approved, the notice of intent is submitted, and then it becomes public facing. So all those 3 documents are in the system for OPM and OTG to review, but it doesn't become public facing until the notice of intent is then issued. Once the notice of intent is issued, then all 3 of those documents, including the notice of intent, becomes public facing, and then the 30-day window opens up. As Karen had stated, the board admin will collect the comments provided by the public at the end of that 30-day window and share with the board for review and or response to the comments, if there are any. And the board administrator prepares a response comments from the board that gets submitted. After that is the step that we're not at yet. It goes to the Attorney General's office, like Karen had stated. And then from there, it goes to the Legislative Regulatory Review Committee, and then final adoption. So Karen has been working hard to get all the completed ones into the system. And I actually have a new updated regulation tracker because she was able to enter in quite a few of the parts by Friday. So I have a new one that will go out to the board after this meeting, and I'll have updated on the board's webpage that reflect the ones that are completed that are ready. That being said, we do have whole parts that are not ready to put into the system yet because we are waiting on the core working groups content areas to complete their tasks under those parts. Once those are completed, our board has approved them, LPDC, SBE, then we can submit in a complete section of regs that those fall under. So those have not been sent in. If there was any pink on that regs organizer that was shared, and I think this is it. No, the other one. So anything that's in pink. So this section is not complete because we're waiting on those regulations to be completed. If we go down a bit farther, part 6, early childhood is not yet done because we have 2 parts that are still awaiting. Part 7, middle grades, is not complete yet. Part 8. So anything that has pink on it means that they are not complete yet and that we are waiting for different regs to be proposed to the board for approval and then to go from there. Now, that being said, that question that came up of when does the public able to participate? So really all along the way. So from when it's proposed at our board meetings, there is public participation. LPDC has opportunity for public participation. State Board of Education has opportunity for public participation. And then once it's entered into the E-reg system with the notice of intent, there's also opportunities for public participation, as well as if we have any ad hoc committees prior to it going to the board. So lots of opportunities there for the public to weigh in, provide their thoughts on what we are doing. So those opportunities are definitely there in multiple spaces for folks. All right, does anyone have any questions about this part before we move on? So the ones that are complete, we're really just waiting for the most part for OPM and OTG to approve. Karen's been in contact with her contacts there. Cynthia Sonia-Moyano is also, the Deputy Commissioner, has also been assisting with that and helping to make sure that we have notice. I'm sorry, she said that we have opportunities to contact different people at different spaces, say, hey, we've got a lot of parts coming through the system for E-regs that we're going to need attention to. We just want to put it on your radar. So the 2 of them, we thank them both, Karen and the Deputy Commissioner, for assisting and trying to get these moved forward as quickly as possible. Right. Any questions on those areas? But Karen, Jocelyn Delancey is still listed as an attendee. Can you move her up to a presenter?
Kind of strange because she was a presenter and it asked me that the system says, do you want to change her to a attendee? So not sure what's going on with Teams, but it's
sure. If you're able to try to fix that, that'd be great. Thank you.
Sure.
All right, our session focus. This is very familiar. We've just added some of the newer items that are under our purview, but I want us to get right into the meat and potatoes of what today's meeting is about, and then the action items that we have. So we are up here between developing and visionary, trying to figure out different ways to tackle some problems that came to us that we thought that were really important, around pipeline, as well as supporting new ways of getting through. So if we move here, this is what we had agreed to kind of work on in August to finalize and approve legislative package, 3 to 4 unified legislative priorities, clear funding requests, define outcomes, validate plan for convening partners, and align on shared statewide agendas for board stakeholders. So we already have a really good start. This is similar to last year's. Let's see if I can make it a bit bigger. So this is what we used to share with the legislator last year. And so we already have 4 that are approved, and then we have an additional 3 that are up for approval through our board, LPDC and SBE, before it moves forward, but we are well within time to do that, and we'll be discussing some of these today. The Professional Educator Scholarship Program, we've already approved as a board, so we'll be looking at an amendment to the sunsetting regulations because we found an additional regulation that could be sunset, and strengthening Connecticut Educator Pipeline Aspiring Educator Scholarship Program. So with that in mind, take a look here. The items in green are holdovers from the 2026 session that weren't picked up by the legislator. There were no public hearings for them, so they wouldn't have to be a redo in terms of LPDC SBE approval. The items listed in blue are items under consideration by either the board, LPDC, or SBE for the 2027 session as well. This format image was the same used as last year, just changed really the date on it, and it's subject to change. Anything that would be changed or updated on this would go to the board for a virtual vote, which we had voted on doing before, like for things like this, where you just kind of do a quick vote on a report or an image or public testimony. So the question is, should we have additional pages that speak to things we support in general, like the SDE priorities that we have already voted to write testimony on in support of, or any other items that come up today from each organizer stakeholder group?
And maybe after our discussions, we can go back to this question
All right, sounds good.
and see if we
Patrice?
feel like we need to.
Okay.
Yeah, I would just observe that in general, it's most effective to keep a priority list short. And then, yes, there will always be other things that we offer our support or perhaps opposition to. But to get legislators' attention, you really need a short list of the priorities of this group.
Okay. I respect your experience in this area because you guys put out a really nice flyer. Thank you, Patrice. All right, anyone else? All right, so we'll return to this a little bit later then. All right. So we'll return to that part later as well. Let's go through the other priorities that we have, and then we can do like the next steps portion of it then. So next is going to be our proposals. So we're going to start off with a quick introduction. There were, out of the working groups came some ideas on how we could make some of the endorsements more efficient, more streamlined, more modern. So these are proposals that were presented. So we have creating a standalone bilingual education endorsement area, combining the endorsement area for teachers of blind students and teachers of partially sighted students. And we have merging of elementary world language instruction and secondary world language endorsement. So I'm going to ask Karen, we'll start off with the document that was labeled 8A. Karen, if you can pull that up and I'll stop presenting. And Marissa, you'll be speaking to this one. It was sponsored by Kristen as a board member, but I believe that this came out of your working group and you're the one very steeped in understanding as to the thinking behind this.
Thank you. Thank you, Jen. And thank you, everyone. Yes, I am indeed a member of the bilingual working group. And just a little background, Dr. Marisa Ferraro, I have been at Southern Connecticut State University for 20 years. The first 10 were in the College of Arts and Sciences in the Department of World Languages with bilingual education. So this is where our teachers who were coming to Southern for a cross endorsement were coming to the graduate department for cross endorsement in bilingual education. And after 10 years of directing a grant, one of the largest at Southern, to recruit teachers to that program, I felt this was too important a need to have as a postscript. And I actually moved to the College of Education and have coordinated the undergraduate elementary bilingual education program at Southern. So for the last 10 years, and I share that because I understand that the title of this proposal is Establishing Bilingual Education Initial Certification Endorsements. And yet, through a circuitous and probably erroneous and problematic route, Southern has had an initial certification program for elementary and bilingual certification. Back when it was temporarily approved, and yet the larger legislative body was not approved. So I'm sharing that context because I'm speaking from having worked in both kind of a graduate work program that provided courses for cross endorsement, and in the last 10 years coordinated a program that when I began in 2007 at 17 had 7 students, and this year has 32 students in our initial elementary bilingual certification program. So it's kind of a dual licensure. So I wasn't sure exactly what my time was to speak to this. So let me just frame kind of what I wanted
You've
to
got
share.
time.
This is, go ahead.
You have time. No worries.
Okay. So I was asked to definitely be here today to urge the board to approve what Kristen had drawn up as the 3 initial certification pathways that we're looking at here in bilingual education. 1, elementary bilingual education for grades pre-K through 6. 2, bilingual STEM education for grades 4 through 12. And bilingual humanities education for grades 4 through 12. So 3 distinct pathways. And I initially drafted something to share with you as to kind of answer that, like what's the need and why 3 pathways. And then most recently, my head has been, but wouldn't people think, well, the cross endorsement's enough? Why not? So I just kind of want to address those 2 big questions. First and foremost, the need, at least in my world, is very clear. Connecticut has nearly 58,000 English learners and multilingual learners, which is roughly 1 in every 9 public school students. The population is now about 11% of the total, while the overall public school enrollment has declined. And of course, we all know at the same time, the Connecticut State Department of Education continues to identify bilingual education as a teacher shortage area. So that's been consistently for probably the last 18 years or longer. So our students are increasingly multilingual, and our districts need bilingual teachers, but our initial certification pipeline has not kept pace. So as I just said, we have a cross endorsement here in the state, which I think is scheduled to sunset next year, for bilingual ed. But that cross endorsement alone cannot solve this problem. Cross endorsement, to me, develops the educators already in our workforce. It's a workforce development strategy. Initial certification expands the workforce by allowing us to recruit our bilingual and multilingual candidates from the beginning and prepare them specifically to become bilingual teachers. So to me, it's a workforce production strategy. Let me just talk about the 3 pathways that Kristen enumerated in this document. 3 pathways and why. bilingual teaching is not the same across the pre-K through 12 developmental span, grades, and disciplines. In pre-K through 6, teachers are helping children become bilingual and biliterate while they are learning to read and write. So we all know we're swimming in the land of literacy and numeracy and developing oracy. These educators need specialized expertise in bilingual language development, early biliteracy, cross-linguistic transfer, foundational literacy, and integrated content and language instruction. And I will say, as also having rewritten Southern's literacy courses, that alignment of the right to read, recent Connecticut legislation, and science of reading has a myriad of implications, all positive for multilingual students, but it also kind of merits a further study of how to do that with those students for whom English is not their native language. So that's kind of, in my mind, the importance of that pre-K through 6 bilingual. While we turn to grades 4 through 12 and look ahead, the challenge clearly changes. Language becomes increasingly discipline specific, where we're looking at mitosis and quadratic functions, and we're really kind of getting into not just deep syntax, sophistication, but looking at very complex discipline specific, as we should. So in STEM, students must use language to explain mathematical reasoning, interpret data, describe scientific processes, and conduct evidence-based scientific arguments. While in humanities, students use language much differently to interpret complex texts, analyze perspective, evaluate sources and evidence, and construct, I would hope, very sophisticated arguments. So to me, these are different disciplinary literacies, and bilingual educators must be prepared accordingly. That said, I do, in my mind, when I already moved to program design, because Southern has a program and I design the courses and architect the program, I imagine some course overlap. So while they are 3 distinct certification pathways, that's not to say that courses among them, between them, are not shared, but there are distinct needs. So I want to first just share that we're proposing 3 pathways because they reflect how bilingual students actually develop, learn, and use language for academic purposes. Connecticut has already identified the need. Part of your work has been to approve the ELML framework in December of 2025 that actually called upon principle number 1, skilled educators, and the need for well-prepared teachers, especially in the linguistic areas. So to me, this is an enactment of that framework. We have a growing multilingual student population, districts seeking bilingual educators. My phone rings all the time from various districts, like, who's graduating this year? What do we got? We need 8 teachers. We only have 1. And so now we need a certification structure capable of responding to that need. So I think with regard to the 3 pathways, I respectfully urge the board to approve all 3 initial certification pathways. Our students are already multilingual. The question, to me at least, is whether our teacher preparation system will be appropriately designed to meet their needs. And I don't know if I should pause because I spoke to the 3 pathways, but I did have a little bit to add about why these initial pathways are different from and are not duplicative of the cross endorsement that does exist.
Why don't we pause there and just see if anybody has any questions and, an opportunity to elaborate from there. After we kind of get done with this particular proposal, we do have to go back and approve the minutes, which we did not do right away. So let's go ahead and do the conversation around this and any action, and then we can kind of go back to that one. Thank you, Karen, for reminding. All right, we have a hand up, Deputy Commissioner Cynthia Sotomayor.
Yes, hi. And I apologize because I stepped away and came back and this presentation had already started. So if you already provided this information, I apologize for asking again. But what is the rationale for grouping certification into STEM and humanities rather than the existing individual content area endorsement? And what implication could that have for prep assignments or like federally highly qualified licensure requirements, if any?
If
Thank you, Cynthia.
I just want to make sure I understand the question. Is the question, rather than the 3, since we are talking about discipline specific, should there be discipline specific, like physics 7 through 12, and then a 7 through 12 physics bilingual certification, like a bilingual certification for each discipline?
So right now, if let's say you're a bilingual educator in a high school and you're teaching a content area such as science, some of those educators have background in that area. So I'm looking at this and it's been grouped into STEM and humanities. I was just trying to figure out the rationale behind that. Because this is here in initial secondary STEM grades 4 through 12 certification.
Yeah, so so I just want to follow that thinking. If you are a high school STEM teacher and have certification appropriately and are an expert in physics, chemistry, whatever the discipline is, then you will not have had the coursework, the expertise, the application to work with bilingual students for whom English is not their first language, and the question of how do I teach this how do I teach this difficult content to students who don't speak my language, right? So they will not have had any training in how to work with bilingual students. At Southern, we do, and we're the only university of the 14 EPPs across the state require high school physics teachers to take 1.5 credits in how to teach physics to multilingual students. But this is looking at how do I use, I'm going to say Spanish because it's the majority of our linguistic minorities, but how do I teach this content in Spanish and access the disciplines to all of these students? So I don't feel I'm answering the question, but I'm not sure how I
guess, so maybe I'll ask it different. Is the rationale between the recommended endorsement, was that based on what data was collected? I know it's always been a shortage, but what was the data that was collected to state, okay, this is the rationale and the route we should take in regards to endorsement?
So I think your question actually is kind of asking where I was going to. So right now there is not a pathway. So if someone is wanting to become a secondary science teacher, they become a secondary science teacher. And if they have the bilingual capacity, like if they are themselves bilingual, then they can return for a cross endorsement, which is 6 courses, usually 18 credits. And they can return after their undergraduate work, after their initial, for that bilingual certification. Now that 6 course, 18 credits, and that may not be the same across all EPPs, so I may be speaking from a very Southern specific lens, but that is just that is coursework, not specifically in STEM, but that's just coursework in how to become a bilingual, how to get your cross endorsement so that you could then teach, is it K9? I'm asking kind of Julianne and Lauren, the bilingual Julie, I think it's, I can't.
Sorry, I had to figure out how to unmute. So there were 2 things that I think that's important for people to understand is in our regulations, the original regulations that we have refer to back when we had the old 009, it was a pre-K to 12, and that's what's in the regs. That was done away with, and since that time we've only been working with the ability to bring people in as a cross endorsement, where again you have to meet all the requirements for whether it's elementary or math or science or whatever, and then you do the 18 credits. And yes, it's the same 6 courses. That's what the cross endorsement regulations say and testing. In statute, in the recent years, they did create new endorsements for bilingual humanities and bilingual STEM. And I believe the reason for doing that is because bilingual is such a shortage area anyway, that to have someone to, if a school's like, I need a bilingual biology teacher and a chemistry teacher and a math teacher and a business teacher and a science, like that, I need a ton of people, and the STEM endorsement allows them to teach any of those areas. So if I have bilingual STEM, I can teach a math and a science class. I could teach 2 different types of science classes to my bilingual students. And the humanities allows them to teach English and history, social studies, same ways. And so rather than creating, I mean, we're still going to continue to have, as long as we have bilingual as a cross endorsement, you can take any teaching endorsement that's an academic area and add bilingual. But the primary pathways was ideally to have an elementary, a secondary humanities, and secondary STEM, because to create programs for every single bilingual English, bilingual history, social studies, bilingual biology, chemistry, how are schools going to maintain 15 programs? Whereas if you cover these 3, that'll allow them to work towards secondary. They can always specialize in, certain areas, and if you're going to be certified in those areas, and you'll need, testing and so forth. But that's why they were trying to kind of streamline it for initial certification.
Thank you, Julianne. Are there any other questions? Jen Delaney?
Hi.
Hi.
So that's a curiosity of mine as well, because would it make it so that people have to pass the math praxis and the biology praxis and the chemistry praxis and the physics, you know what I'm saying? Tech ed praxis. So I think that is an interesting question, because that's what we require and have spoken at length about regarding praxis to testing, right? Is we need to make absolutely sure that every single person who teaches math passes this score with this score in that area. So if I am a specialist in the sciences, but maybe cannot pass the praxis to and teach math, how will we be assuring that, for principals and teachers, I'm sorry, principals and parents, the kids, of course, that person has that content knowledge. And then vice versa is, well, if we're not assuring that, then why is it so critical that we do that for everyone else? So it's, I think everyone here knows that I have some struggle with the praxis too, and what that really means. So I think no matter what decision we make here, and I'm a proponent of moving forward with something like this, absolutely. But what does that mean as a whole for our work if some groups of people do not have to pass that test, and we're demanding that other groups of people do have to pass those tests? So so it's a 2-part, it's a question and a curiosity that has a larger umbrella to it.
All right, who would like
And
to
I
speak
don't
to that
think we
question?
can answer those questions right now necessarily, right? But they're things that will come up.
Okay. Thank you, Jen. Are there any other questions, or does anyone want to respond to that question?
I want to thank Jen for flooring that question. In my mind, because I coordinate the elementary and elementary bilingual program, my students still have to adhere to all of the requirements that the elementary candidates pursuing pre-K through 6, meaning the foundations of reading test, the praxis to, they still have to complete all of those, and they're earning the bilingual education certification and have to complete the ACTFL to show language competency, et cetera, and the
Yeah.
courses. So to me, when I thought of the secondary, I wasn't thinking that I wasn't envisioning that the secondary would not follow that same path insofar as if I am pursuing initial cert in physics, yes, I have to take the same, I am accountable for the same assessments that anybody would be to earn that physics certification. And then I would have the bilingual and STEM added to that. That was how I was envisioning it, but I'd love to hear from Lauren, who has been
Yeah.
really helpful with this.
Right. And I think maybe I was envisioning it where if it's a general STEM, then what does that mean I can teach? And I'm a principal or superintendent, I'm trying to hire teachers, and I have a humanities STEM, but it's to teach math, algebra 1, 2, and geometry. But the person certified in physics, their preparation plan and their
Understood.
praxis 2 was physics. Same thing with like, you have to pass chemistry, physics, biology, any of those that you're going to teach, you have to pass all those different tests.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
it's a lot of testing for someone to be able to teach multiple courses within STEM. But that's what we need as principals and school districts. We need to be able to hire people who can work multiple roles, because there may only be this 25 kids in the same language that we need to provide bilingual instruction to, because those are our numbers, but we can't find a teacher bilingual certified chemistry, bilingual certified math, bilingual certified tech ed. I think I'm trying to look at it from the school administrator standpoint, the cert board standpoint, the testing standpoint. So it's like a lot of moving parts.
Yeah, so we're gonna thank you, Jen. I think that was a very thoughtful response, and thank you. So we're gonna go to Lauren and then to Jocelyn.
So I first have a question that I think Julie can answer, and then I just have a comment. But Julianne, currently, what is the testing requirement for the individuals who obtain this certificate? Because as a cross endorsement, people can currently obtain as a cross endorsement bilingual STEM and or bilingual humanities and can teach those various disciplines. So is there currently a testing requirement as a cross endorsement in that case? That's just my question because I'm less familiar with cross endorsement.
To add a cross endorsement bilingual, there is again, like if you're writing elementary, you need to have the bilingual coursework and you need to have the elementary testing. If you're writing, bilingual math, there's again the math tests. The bilingual STEM and humanities that we currently have allows them to teach kind of like we have for non-bilingual. We have integrated humanities and we have integrated STEM. So if you're teaching a course that involves science and math and there's not a test, we don't have a STEM test. So the person's going to be certified in math or science or one of those areas, but then they have to have a certain amount of coursework in STEM, and then they can add the integrated and they can teach that. Like right now, a math teacher, someone who's certified 029 math, can teach an integrated STEM course. It's going to have some science in it, but they're authorized because it's an integrated STEM. It lets you teach integrated coursework. So in the same way we have science, you have a gen science course, which combines biology concepts and earth science concepts. And the person who's certified in biology can teach that integrated course. They can't teach just a chem if they only have biology. So it aligns with those.
And then I just wanted to
Thank you, Julianne.
Yeah.
All right.
And
sorry, Lauren.
Oh, that's okay. And then I think those are all really good questions. And I just wanted to highlight, like Marissa had shared in the beginning, this sort of question around coming up with initial preparation requirements for bilingual education, came out of the subgroup that was charged with, TESOL and bilingual. And these questions started being raised about an initial certification pathway in bilingual education because the regulations don't currently exist for that. And the recommendation was before they could begin thinking about all these really important details that are coming up, that the whole just general idea of it had to come before this board to see if that could even be considered. So I think, these are all really important questions.
Thank you. Jocelyn, go ahead.
So I, years ago, 20 or more, so to speak, I participated in a program at Fairfield University, which was a cross endorsement in bilingual ed with special education. And I did not follow through with the cross endorsement, even though I took the coursework because of the practical experience that I needed in order to get the cross endorsement and some of the testing. And then, so as I'm thinking about the kind of barriers that we're trying to remove, it seems to me, the feasibility of a school having enough enrollment to have a full course for some of these higher, like science and math topics that allow for somebody to have the time to get certified in both areas. I think we have to be really mindful of the tools and skill sets that you need as a bilingual educator and what that looks like in terms of making sure somebody is qualified to use those skill sets to teach some of these higher level content areas and make sure that there aren't too many barriers, because it does seem, as Jen was saying, a little overwhelming to have all of these assessments and all of these spaces, that I think there are very specific tools that you need as an educator when you have that bilingual aspect, understanding that there are so many languages that might be coming to that space, unless we're talking about a sole bilingual class where one class is taught in Spanish and one class is taught in English. That's a different type of program than, you have multilingual learners in your space. And so I think as I'm thinking about this, it does seem like it might be a very overwhelming process to have to go for a full cross endorsement in a way with that skill set. I just think we need to be very mindful of how many people are going to have the time to be able to invest in both certifications. And that would hurt our ability to make sure that our students have access to highly qualified teachers who can do the bilingual work. And I'm sure that's part of your challenge, but I just want to, it was a turnoff for me 20 years ago, and I didn't pursue it. So.
Thank you, Jocelyn. So we have Julianne's hand up.
I just wanted to kind of along that same vein mention that when you think about special ed teachers, they're prepared to work with all kinds of special needs students. A special ed teacher takes a special ed test. They don't take the Praxis Math and the Praxis English and the Praxis Science, but they are teaching those subjects to students who've been identified on IEPs as needing a special ed teacher. So in a sense, bilingual is that, like, you're specializing as bilingual and you're going to be presenting it, but it's, again, it depends on whether you have a dual language program. There's different types of bilingual programs. And so that's just backing up what was said already.
Thank you. All right, go ahead, Marissa.
And thank you for raising that, Jocelyn. That's an important distinction. When I speak about the bilingual initial certification, it is indeed for teachers to be using in cross-linguistic spaces, both English and whatever the language is, given the majority of linguistic students in a given school. So again, I'm using Spanish, but we have Mandarin, we have I don't know how many languages, how many bilingual language programs in Connecticut, but so I'm not speaking of the gen ed teacher's ability to teach physics in English to non-native English speakers. I'm speaking when you're working in a dual language program and you're teaching the same curriculum, but you're either doing it in tandem in a dual language situation so that there's an English and a Spanish component, or you are the one teacher who is kind of linguistically switching in and out of target and target and a native language. But I do want to say that that's exactly, I'm so glad Jocelyn brought it up, because that's my number one, in answer to, well, why initial, Marisa? Why not just add bilingual ed later as a cross endorsement? Number one is access and affordability. Many will not pursue the cross endorsement later, for financial and practical barriers are simply too great. Having spent 10 years working in that program, I say firmly from experience that I've watched extraordinary educators attempt to do it all. Teaching full-time, which is like 24/7, raising young families, meeting the increasingly complex demands of their schools, and taking 2 or 3 university courses per semester. It is a lot. Many begin, not all finish. So we are seeing the financial barrier even earlier in the pipeline. Most of my current bilingual teacher candidates are working in schools as tutors and paraprofessionals while pursuing their undergraduate degrees. They are exactly the people Connecticut should be working to bring into the teaching profession. They know our schools, they know our students, and they bring valuable bilingual and bicultural assets to the classroom. They are from the community. So many are already stretching financially to complete their bachelor's degrees, actively seeking funding. I dedicated 6 weeks this summer to drafting a $3.8 million federal grant with, hopefully we find out next month, the commissioner wrote a letter of support for the program, along with New Haven, Wyndham, Norwalk, Meriden, and New Britain. But I believe that under a kind of thinking of certify first, add bilingual later model, we're effectively telling these candidates, finish your undergrad, become a teacher, and then find the resources for 6 more courses, 18 credits, which while you were talking, I did the math at Southern, is $15,840 for a bilingual cross endorsement, 6 courses, 18 credits. So for my students, that is simply outside of their financial bandwidth. And that to me is the number one. The number two, bilingual education is not a postscript in learning how to teach. The strongest teacher preparation is coherent, developmental, intentionally spiraled. So candidates encounter ideas repeatedly across coursework, apply them in clinical experiences, examine them with expert faculty, and problematize solutions. I have found that when teachers learn how to become a teacher in an initial cert, they're apprenticed into the practice and they do it well. Research has shown that when you come back for kind of that post, the cross endorsement, you are less ready to apply what you've learned subsequent to already becoming a teacher, to developing that pedagogical application. So initial preparation allows candidates to understand bilingualism, biliteracy, language development assessment, while concurrently learning how to become a literacy teacher, a mathematics teacher, science, history. It's like I learned this and now I learn how to do it with the multilingual students rather than wait. So I think the integration matters. And I think that our multilingual students deserve more than an add-on. Our candidates deserve the opportunity to learn how to educate them as an integral part of becoming a teacher. The third, I think initial certification changes whom Connecticut can recruit into the profession. Cross endorsement, as I said, only draws on our current pool of educators. Initial certification allows us to recruit bilingual, multilingual college students, paraprofessionals, tutors, and other educators. I've worked really hard in the seal of biliteracy. We have an amazing amount of high school graduates earning the seal of biliteracy. I would love to tap into them and recruit them and let them know that their bilingualism is an asset to the state and to the future workforce of teachers. Initial certification allows us to do that. And the very last, because I know that we're just the very last and fourth and final argument, waiting until after initial certification delays the workforce Connecticut desperately needs. Under a sequential model, a candidate completes the initial cert, enters the profession, and then must complete the additional preparation, even if they had the funding and the resources. So Connecticut districts continue to report difficulty filling bilingual positions every year. My students, once they finish, are actually immediately hired from student teaching. An integrated initial pathway changes that equation so that our candidates graduate prepared to serve as bilingual educators from day one. So cross endorsement remains an essential pathway. It's not duplicative for me. It's an essential pathway, but it should complement the initial certification, not be a substitute for it. Connecticut needs both. The cross endorsement develops the workforce we already have. An initial cert removes the barriers and builds the workforce we need next.
Thank you. Okay. So the question then is, since I see no hands raised at this time, we had very good and I think important discussion and questions. Is there a motion to approve this proposal?
I motion to approve this proposal.
This is
Rowe. I'll second.
All right, so we had a motion, Karen, by Elsa and a second by Dr. Rowe. All right, any further discussion? All right, seeing none, let's go ahead and put it to a vote. Those who are in favor, please click the raise your hand button at this time. All right, so in favor, we have Dr. Rowe, Margaret, Elsa, Jen Delaney, Malia, Malia, sorry. Well, so we have Dr. Ritchie, Deputy Commissioner Cynthia Sotomayor, Jen Benvento, and Sarah. All right, so I believe we have 9. Everybody's unselecting their hand now, so I need you to keep your hands up if you are in favor of this.
Jen, I'm sorry, do I have voting for Kristen or am I just a participant?
Yes, you do.
Okay.
You do.
All right, then
voted
I
for
raised my
Kristen.
hand. Sorry, I wasn't sure.
No, no worries. So we have 11 in favor then. Folks that are in favor are Jocelyn, Elsa, Sarah, Malia, Margaret, Cynthia Ritchie, Cynthia Sotomayor, Jen Benvento, Jen Delaney, and Catherine Rowe. And I just read them off so that way Karen has them for the record. The motion passes. And then once we get through all these, we'll kind of discuss next step for all of the other ones that are in there. Any not in favor? If everyone wants to unselect, just so we have on record, or any those not in favor. Cynthia, are you not in favor? Are you?
It didn't take it down. Hold on. Sorry about that.
No worries. All right. So I don't see any that are not in favor. And are there any abstentions at this time? All right. Seeing none, then that motion carries. I do need to go back to the minutes really quickly. Is there any edits or to the minutes from the last meeting in June? Right, seeing none, without objection, we have passed the minutes from June by general consensus. Thank you. All right, let's move on to the next item. Thank you for that important discussion. All right, next we have, Karen, if you can bring up 8B, which is the combining the endorsement area for teachers of blind students and teachers of partially sighted students. And Dr. Rowe will be speaking on this one.
Thank you. I happen to be present, but it's not necessarily in my wheelhouse. But what I can say is that it was my understanding from the folks at CSDE that these are not endorsements that people go into separately. So folding them together could be more efficient. And that was the outcome. That is anything else that we can add from CSDE folks on this discussion, because I'm on the agenda, but it really wasn't my my area.
You're a sponsorship. I got you. So Julianne, go ahead.
I just want to say that most other states, they don't have separate endorsements for blind and partially sighted. And so this kind of makes it smoother and streamlined when people are coming in from out of state programs. The requirements are very similar. There's like a, Braille, there's a couple little things that are extra. And so this way, by merging them, I think it'll make it easier to bring people in, let them get both areas, instead of just selecting one or the other. And for the classrooms, educators, for administrators, they're not really going to have a separate class for blind students and separate class for, so you need someone who's typically they have to come in and get both endorsements anyway, but if you combine it, it just makes it a little more streamlined.
Okay. Lauren?
And I just think
Thank you,
also,
Julia.
like what Julian said, for important context, there are no programs in Connecticut for either of these. It's such a highly specialized expertise that there's really only a handful of universities around the country that offer teacher preparation for blind and visually impaired. And CEPL brought in some of the experts in that field, and they spoke to the programs where most of their educators come from, and they're from states where it's a collapsed certification. So Connecticut, I think, has been somewhat of an outlier in having two discrete endorsements for that population. So this came out of the folks, like, this is not our expertise either. So this, like Catherine was saying, came out of the folks who have this highly specialized expertise.
Thank you, Lauren. Are there any questions around this? I have a quick question. Is the one for hearing impaired already collapsed? Because aren't they like two separate ones, like fully deaf and hearing impaired? Do we already have something similar to that? And then we would just
We have
aligning it.
hearing impaired, which include, we don't have a deaf, it is already collapsed. So this is kind of doing the same thing with vision.
Got it. Thank you. Does anyone else have any questions? Okay, seeing none, I would cater a motion. Is there a motion on the floor for this?
Rowe, motion to approve.
Thank you. And do we have a second?
Gustafson, second.
Margaret was a second. All right. Any further discussion? All right. Seeing none, we'll start off with those who are in favor. Please click the raise your hand button now and keep it up. All right. We have 11 in favor. So that's Jocelyn, Dr. Ritchie, Jen Delaney, Malia, Sarah, Cynthia Soni Moyano, Elsa, Dr. Rowe, Jen Benvento, and Margaret. All right, if you guys can unselect your hands. Do we have any not in favor? Dr. Rowe, if you want to unselect your raised hand. All right, doesn't look like we have any not in favor. Do we have any abstentions? None. All right, so that passes. Thank you. We'll go to the next one, which is the proposal for, it is 8C, merging the elementary world language instruction, secondary world language endorsement. Michelle Back and Dean Mel Horton. Is Michelle on the call, or is Dean Horton on the call?
I don't believe Dr. Horton is on the call. She is not.
Okay, she might not have been able to join after all then.
It's good. I took the phone notes. All right, I'm gonna go with this. Thank you very much.
Karen, can you go ahead and mute that for a second?
Sure.
Thank you. So I think at this time, because we don't have either one of the folks to speak to it, that we should table this to the next meeting. Do you have a motion to table this to the next meeting?
Motion to table to the next meeting, Jen Delaney.
Thank you, Jen. Do we have a second?
Seconded, Jennifer Benevento.
Jen Benvento, thank you. Seconded. All right. All in favor of tabling to the next meeting, raise your hand at this time. right, we have 9 in favor of tabling at this time. We have 10 in favor of tabling. So we will table this to the next meeting. Thank you. Do we have any who were against tabling it? Okay, thank you. All right, everybody can reset their hands then. So we'll move on to the next part because I will be speaking to the next 3. I will be handing over the moderation to Dr. Ritchie, our vice chair. Thank you, Dr. Ritchie, for taking that on. We'll start off, Karen, with 8D, please, which is amendment to sunsetting language to add regulation ending in 545.
Hey, everybody. Hi, Jen. I will kick it over to you to explain the proposal, please, to the group.
Sure. So in the process that I discussed earlier of going through and organizing all the regulations, I realized that 545 is a provisional certification regulation, which no longer exists under Public Act 2441, rather than going through the whole process of having to just put one regulation forward to sunset, and we already have language out there to sunset to amend the sunsetting language that includes some regulations and also remove some regulations that we have worked really hard on. We decided to just kind of add this in. So Karen, if you scroll down, you'll actually see it's highlighted in yellow. We've already approved this legislative language. The only difference is that we're adding this little yellow bit in there. Scroll all the way down to the 3rd page, please. Thank you. So you can see there, this reflects the amendments that we've already done, where we've removed the regulations that we have updated, which are in brackets in gray, and the red ones are the new ones that we've added in to sunset under our recommendation. And we are just asking to have 545 added to that list as it is relates to provisional, which we don't issue anymore. We don't newly issue anymore.
Thank you. Are there any questions on this proposal? Okay, seeing none, is there a motion to approve this proposal?
Motion Gustafson.
Thank
Second,
you.
Second row.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Okay, so we will take a vote. All in favor of approving this proposal, please raise your hand. Okay, it looks like voting is in and the motion carries. If you can illuminate your hand, and is there anyone who is against voting for being in favor of this proposal? Okay, I see none, so the motion carries. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Karen, can you pull up the next one then?
Jen, I'll kick it over to you again to do a summary of the proposal, please.
Sure. So this is an amendment to Regulation 619. Currently, it's not a sunsetting regulation, but it was flagged by Emma that we need some more rulemaking underneath it, because currently we do have some endorsements that we are issuing, but they don't have their own ed prep program set up in regulations or specific requirements for the endorsement listed in regulations currently. So to conform to or to ensure that we're following formal rulemaking under Chapter 54 of the Connecticut State Statute, we came up with some proposed options for amending the original regulation. And if you scroll down to the bottom, you'll actually see two options. My option is on the left, and Emma's option is to the left. I submitted my first option to Emma, and she came back with a much more detailed version, obviously, based on what needs to be done. I did ask SDE for some feedback. The major concern is just ensuring that those people who hold current certifications that have been issued through the 619 pathway, that they're grandfathered in, and that this would really just apply to those who would be getting issued after the amendment went into effect. So if you want to take a moment to kind of read through, and then we can have some discussion on which option you prefer. And if anything needs to be amended, and if this would be approved.
I will open the floor for questions and discussion. If anyone would like to raise their hand to participate. Go ahead, Jocelyn. So are we going to discuss, is someone going to make a motion in favor of one option over the other, and then we'll discuss it? Or are we going to discuss first and then motion?
I think that we should probably, I would prefer that we make a decision on which one we'd like to discuss first, and then decide if that's something that we want to move forward with formally.
Then can we discuss option B first? Sure. Okay, so we'll begin discussion on option B. If you'd like to raise your hand to contribute to discussion, please do so.
Dr. Ritchie, is it okay if I kind of like speak through option B a little bit?
I think that would be good. I think people are digesting, and go ahead. Why don't we start with that?
So Emma, I think, did a really nice job of kind of prefacing each section with like a quick little title that gives you a little bit of insight as to what that paragraph is going to be addressing. Terms of the unique endorsement. We kind of went through the idea that new unique endorsements that might get issued would be a 3-year term. We wanted to align that with the fact that we can DSAP for up to 3 years as well. So we wanted things to be kind of consistent across different spaces. So instead of a 2-year, and we decided a 3-year term to allow our board and SDE to work to establish an actual endorsement requirement and an EPP program, within those 3 years. And that would allow to see like how much interest there is in that particular unique endorsement and need within that. B, the endorsement issued before this amendment. So this is that kind of grandfathering in. It just ensures that anybody who's been issued an endorsement prior to this amendment going into effect, that their endorsement is grandfathered in and it doesn't expire, and they'd have to reapply for a new or adhere to new requirements because they've been doing the work, right? They've been doing the work for several years likely. So this would allow them to be grandfathered in. And then expiration. So anything that is first issued on or after the effective date would have that 3-year expiration to allow us to do that Chapter 54. And then obviously, if we establish a a standing one, it would lead into D, which is the conversion upon adoption. So those who are holding it for the 3 years would obviously convert automatically into the adopted regulations that would govern this for rulemaking. Completion of requirements, again, speaks to that unique endorsement of such program, provided such period shall not exceed 3 years. And then equivalency, any individual holding a unique endorsement under this section may apply for existing endorsements. So again, once a new endorsement is created fully over that 3 years, they can apply for it, or we can decide to just issue it automatically to those who already hold it for those 3 years more permanently. And then a continuation of the assignment. I'm just kind of reorienting myself here. It just speaks again to covering such assignments been adopted, may continue to serve under such assignment so long as such individual remains continuously employed in such assignment by the same Board of Education. And then construction reverts back to D and H. And we do have some endorsements out there that already are issued under 619 that we would want to get, codified into regulations. I think there's like a Montessori one. I think there's a computer science one, correct, Julian? I'm trying to remember the other ones that are involved in this, but we already have a starting point of ones that we would want to kind of work on and ensure that those folks who have already gotten their initial and likely their professional would keep those, and that there would be no interruption to their ability to do their work under that.
Yes, if I could ask the State Department to elaborate a little bit more, what is defined as a unique endorsement, and what else could be added to this list under this regulation?
So, Julianne Frost, the unique endorsement is in our regs. It basically says if there's an endorsement area that is not currently in the regs, that the Department of Ed can issue an endorsement in that area, and we are supposed to set requirements so that it aligns with our other requirements. So for example, computer science. Right now in our regs, we don't have a certificate for computer science. It says in the regs you can do that under any grade appropriate certificate. There were people who were coming into the state having completed a state approved teacher preparation program specific to computer science, and we had nothing to offer them because we didn't have an equivalent. And so by creating a unique endorsement, if somebody, went to school in New York or Massachusetts and they did a program for it to be a computer education teacher, this allowed us to issue a unique endorsement computer science. We also, it was already also set up that there were cross endorsement pathways, because there were districts and educators who wanted to be able to say, well, not only do I have a grade appropriate certificate, but I'm really well versed in computer science and networking and programming. And so again, we aligned just like we have now, we have cross endorsements typically are either 30 credits and testing, or under a more recent statute, it's just the testing alone. So we did the exact same thing for computer science. If you have 30 credits in computer education, and if there's a breakout a little bit, or the testing. So we've mirrored other existing endorsements, which is what was the intent to do that. Montessori was one that came in, but again, that one's unique because it doesn't require a planned program in the same way that you think of your traditional planned programs. Montessori, they have an AMI certificate. There are two types of Montessori preparation tracks. One is AMS and one is AMI. And years ago, they researched it and felt that AMS was insufficient. And so we adopted AMI. And again, we used to issue it as unique endorsement Montessori. We gave it its own number now, so we can distinguish it. But it's based on studies that were done previously. So we frequently will get requests for unique endorsements in areas that we don't have. Just because someone requests doesn't mean they'll say, oh, I want a unique endorsement in, trying to think of weird ones we've had, in gifted education. And again, well, our regs already say you can do that. So the only reason that we could reach the point where we actually give it a unique endorsement number is if we have a large enough number of people applying for the same area over and over, which is what happened with computer science and Montessori, that we said, okay, we need to have an endorsement that represents that. So unique endorsements, I don't know what else it would be. They would have, you know, if something came up and said, oh, here's something we want to add that's a new area, I suppose we could consider it.
Thank you. Jen?
You're on mute.
I just realized it, sorry. Thank you, Julianne, for shedding some more light on that and clarifying. And just to be clear, it does not take away the ability of SDE to create unique endorsements based on need or anything else as they come up, and as we want to be flexible and change. All the new language states is that once it has been established, that we take those 3 years to kind of do a deep dive into, do we need an ed prep program or do we need specific criteria around that while folks are working underneath those endorsements? And it ensures that we follow, I think it's called a UAA rule requirements, the UA, I'm looking for it. Can't find it right now, but chapter 54. And then there's specific rulemaking requirements underneath that that allow our board to deliberate around it, allows the public to have participation and access to providing feedback on them as well. So again, it would not change the State Department's ability to be flexible and create new endorsements as needed, as things change, and be nimble in that way. It just adds on a kind of time frame and expectation of what this looks like in terms of going through the process of ensuring that we're following rulemaking requirements.
Thank you. Julianne?
I just wanted to mention that we have done that part of that. Like we did pull together a computer science committee, and like there were committees that decided what the decision was going to be made for us to add these unique endorsements. What we didn't get to is like a public opinion. We didn't have, that's the part we didn't have. So that would change. We didn't just we didn't have like 1 or 2 people just saying, oh, this is what you need. Like we did have committees that were like researching and determining what would be appropriate to be eligible for.
And I love that we have that foundation for that too, like that process and protocol that can be embedded into this work. So thank you for that, Julianne.
Thank you. Are there other questions or discussion on this topic? Is there a motion to approve this proposal? I'll move to approve proposal. Now it's gone, but the B. Jocelyn. Thank you, Jocelyn. Is there a second?
Second,
Second.
Thank you, Elsa. Okay, all those in favor of approving this proposal, please raise your hand. I see 11 hands. If you can please clear your hands. If there's anyone against this proposal, please raise your hand. I see none. Is there anyone who wishes to abstain? Okay, thank you, everyone. The proposal is approved.
Thank you, everyone. Okay. Next is a Strengthening Connecticut Educator Pipeline proposed amendment. So that's F, Karen, if you can pull that one up.
All right, Jen, this is yours as well, so I will ask you to do an overview, please.
Sure, I just have to pull it up because I accidentally closed my folder of all these documents, so I can see it a little bit closer because that's really small on my screen for me. So if you could just bear with me for a quick moment, I appreciate your patience. All right. So what we're really looking at here is we've done a lot of talk. We had a presentation, I believe it was in March, on the 6 to 16 pipeline. And I think many of us were floored to hear that, you know, so much of what was put forward to the budget this past session did not get approved. So in an effort to think creatively and think about the funds that currently exist as opposed to layering on another funds proposal, I looked to figure out ways where we could incorporate some of the priorities that we had talked about early on in January about like paid student teaching and how to use the funds. So currently, as what was shared with us, there is a scholarship for aspiring educators. And that scholarship, trying to find the right one here. It's this, no, not that one. That scholarship is $4 million. Approximately $1 million of it gets used a year and $3 million is returned to the general fund. What I'm proposing is 3 potential options for the board to review, to put forward in legislation, and how those funds can be used in addition to the remaining funds could be used, should there be remaining funds, in a different way that supports that 6 through 16 pipeline. I'm actually having trouble actually finding this one. This one is ACDE. Here it goes, sorry. So if you scroll down, I do not want to change anything in reference to the way that it currently works, with one exception. I do think that we should change it from 10,000 to 15,000 because the cost of tuition is much higher these days than in the past for those candidates under the current language. So there is an amendment to change it from $10,000 to $15,000 in Section A. It does not change the timeline. The current timeline is that through June, I believe, that they have to, the scholarship opens up to the aspiring educators as it's currently defined in legislation and was updated this past year. And then on, I believe it's July 15th or somewhere's around there. So anything that is remaining has to be sent back to the general fund. So that's where we get that over the past several years, approximately $3 million per year of this scholarship has been returned to the general fund. So I'm proposing that it continues to do what it's doing with the same deadlines that it has, but then at that date and turning it to the general that are remaining, we could think creatively about supporting the 6 through 16 pipeline. So I have 3 options. So if you scroll down, Karen, to option number 1, amendment option 1, I think it's on page 4. You can scroll up a little bit more, Karen, so they can keep going. You're on page 3. Right there, thank you. Oh, too far. Up a little bit where it says 1. Thank you, right there. So this one is closely aligned with the original intent of the language. Instead of an annual one-time fund, so I don't know if you remember, but I believe that they allotted it was 200,000 or 300,000 to use for the paraeducator pathway to certification out of that funds, but it's a one-time deal this session. So instead of a one-time deal, it keeps the money in educator preparation and it gives the commissioner flexibility to establish eligibility through policy rather than statute. So if you want to take a moment to read over the amendment that says E there. And then if you scroll up to 2 a little bit or scroll down, we can see the entirety of 2. Thank you. This one allows room to adapt without another statutory change. So within this one, it actually gives the priorities in order of grants to students enrolled in a required full-time clinical experience, including student teaching semester of an appropriate educator preparation program. So scholarship goes out like it normally does. Any funds remaining, it would be towards would be used towards folks that are enrolled in full-time clinical experience, that student teaching semester, right? To help offset that burden of not being able to work, but working full-time without pay, removing a barrier of the cost that's involved there. 2 would be educator residency or apprenticeship stipends. So, talk about that next gen or TRAP. 3 would be financial assistance to educator preparation candidates for certification related costs. So it might be housing costs or what have you to help offset that. And then other educator workforce development initiatives established by the commissioner. So that would be, a lot of the unfunded things that were in the budget this year. Branding, updating the website, all those kinds of things. And then option 3, instead of listing programs, it establishes a policy principle, like an overarching expectation. So no later than July 15th of such fiscal year, the commissioner may retain and expand such funds for initiatives that advance educator recruitment, preparation, completion, certification, entry, and retention into teaching profession in the state, including financial assistance for candidates completing the required clinical experience, including their student teaching semester for an approved educator preparation. So what I put forward to you is the idea of here are 3 options in varying degrees. Any questions that you might have about them, and then kind of defining which one, if the board wanted to move forward with one of the 3 options.
Thank you, Jen. I'll open it for discussion. I see Margaret. Go ahead.
Thank you. I just have a question about the increased amount. We just heard from Marisa that the cost for 18 credits is over $15,000. So I'm wondering if rising from 10,000 to 15,000 is actually enough. And do we have any data that supports that support? Obviously, we don't want folks leaving with very much student loan. And I think that the rest of the proposal is great. I love the flexibility that's built in, and we should not be sending back these funds because we have so much opportunity in front of us to be able to use things creatively. Thank you.
So the 15, whenever I kind of write up a proposal, I make sure that I, reach out to all the people who know way more than I do in terms of education in the pipeline and what have you. And that was a recommendation that was, brought forward when I was talking with SDE of, maybe we can move it from 10 to 15. It wasn't set in stone, but it stuck in my head. And I said, well, let me change that to 15. I mean, they could have said, let's move it from 10 to 20, and I would have changed it then, but it was just something that kind of stuck in my head. I'm not married to it. So if anybody thinks that it should be more per candidate, I don't have issue with that. I just don't know what the difference currently is of, a state university all the way to a private university and what that range is per semester as well. So I think any increase is a good increase.
Agreed. And I think you said it perfectly. Looking at private and public, there's just such a huge cost. And so if we can reduce some of that burden, that'd be great. But I see Shawana's got her hand up too, and Jocelyn, so I'll pass to them.
Thank you. Jocelyn, go ahead.
So my question is more around like the return of the $3 million. Is it that we don't have enough people applying for the program or who fit the qualifications, or is it an access and understanding of what's available to people out there? I'm all for the raise to 15,000, but I also am just curious if there's more some of our stakeholder groups should be doing to make sure that all people in the EPPs understand, or whatever pathway it is, understand that this is available to them. So I just want to make sure as we vote on something like this, that we know the work we have to do to make sure that if this were approved by the legislature, how we get the word out.
That's a really good question. Oh, sorry.
I was just gonna say, Jocelyn, to answer your question, we do publicize this broad and wide to all of our students, our EPPs, everyone, all of our organizations. What I will say is I think we just have to be mindful and remember that when this first started out, the monies were only allocated to students in priority and alliance school districts. So now that has changed, it is opened up to all. So what we're hoping is that we will see larger numbers of applicants for this. However, that's just for the fall, because remember the language that was put in there this past session specified shortage areas, and it also specified underrepresented groups. And so the commissioner has to decide how she's going to work through that and what policy she's going to implement. So right now it's open to everybody because we had already advertised the scholarship prior to that legislation coming out. So right now it's everybody. So it's going to change again for January based on what her policy is going to be regarding underrepresented and shortage areas. One of the conversations that we had during our recent talent office workday was if by chance the scholarship remained at 10,000, we would elevate it to 15,000 as an incentive for those in shortage areas. And we had also proposed that last year for those in shortage areas to receive the 15. And really what's important here is we can up the amount, but this is really based on the FAFSA, because when students apply, we have to verify with the university that one, they're in good standing, they're enrolled, and we also verify it with the financial aid office. So depending on what their FAFSA and their need is, they may not even receive the full 10, because if you have financial aid or other scholarships that's covering, we've had to alter and maybe give somebody 3,000 as opposed to the 10,000 based on the need of their financial aid.
Which I think makes sense. And I think the language says up to 10, which would possibly change to up to 15 to allow for that, difference between what they might already be receiving versus, what they actually need.
Catherine?
Thanks. And thanks, Dr. Tucker. This is kind of a tangent, but it is related to FAFSA because we have had this information. We have had this conversation before. I'm wondering what I have for other scholarships that come through outside of the aspiring educators is that the scholarship goes directly to the financial aid office. And maybe we're using kind of like that backpack communication where we're notifying the students, or the students checking their email. Are we getting it too late? Then they have to figure out, then it goes to financial aid. Would it be helpful for CSTE to reach out directly to the EPP financial aid offices? I'm not saying not to include the students, but then a kind of backwards plan where the financial aid office notifies us to get the students involved. I'm just wondering if the mechanism in getting the students involved is still part of the issue. I know we stand outside the door and hand out those flyers, and having the students follow up is a challenge. So it was just an idea. I don't even know if it's relevant, but I just thought I would.
The only thing for us, Kate, and that's a good point, the only thing is we have to verify our verification first is with the deans to make sure that they're enrolled in your program before we then even go to financial aid, because many times financial aid, they're just looking at the numbers and what the package is. They're not verifying to us that this student is enrolled in the College of Education, majoring in X, Y, and Z.
Back to the financial aid office. The financial office contacts me and will give me a spreadsheet. Are they enrolled and XYZ? So there is a mechanism in place for verification if we kind of planned it differently or piloted it. I'm just throwing something out there just to try to reach more students.
We can try it, but what I'm saying is it's different at some of our other schools. It's not that same system that you just mentioned at some of our other schools. So for us, it was easier to do it that way. I mean, we definitely want to get the word out to as many students as possible. The other thing that we've tried to do, and we've worked with our legal, and we do have a document that we'll be sending out this year, and we're putting it back in legislation. We really want, and we put this in last year, we really would like to see the funds go for tuition only, because the problem that we run into is, oh, well, if my tuition, if it's for 10,000 and I only need 5,000, can you send the other 5,000 to me as the student so I can do what I want to do with it? And so we've got to put parameters around that. And we know that some people live on campus, some people do not live on campus. So it really becomes very hairy. And some of the questions that we've been asked about how the funds can be used have been a little bit shady in some instances. That we're like, no, you cannot do that with the funds. Either we get that from a lot of the students. But that's why we would like for it to really go to tuition. And this year, I think we're putting in the word fees, because there are fees associated at all of the schools. And so if it can go towards the tuition and fees, that covers really the bulk of what it is. And we just looked at, I think last week, at tuition costs when we were going through this. And I think at our state colleges, the tuition and fees are averaging like 15, 16,000. And of course, at the privates, it's up to 50. But that's your choice if you want to go down that path. But we're trying to just be fair and consistent with what it is that we're offering. But we definitely want to get, if there are ways that we can, and we are open to that. If you know of other ways we can get this out. We've even met, there was someone at Southern and another institution that we met with to say, hey, you're in the career advancement, financial aid, recruitment office. Can we send this information to you so you can get it out to students? Because we do want as many students who are eligible to apply so that we can get the money out the door to them.
Thanks. I know you do an extraordinary job with
so we'll try it.
So few. So thank you. Thanks for all you do.
We're open.
Other questions? I have an operational question. If we were to pay student teachers for their student teaching, who would run the operations of that? How would the student teacher get the check? Would that have to flow through each school district? Would that come from the commissioner? Would that be something the talent office manages? Like, who has the manpower to do that?
Sure. So this isn't to pay student teachers. It's to pay for their semester of student teaching. So that way it kind of keeps everything still very streamlined, where it still would go to the financial aid office and it would cover the cost in that way. It's to alleviate one burden associated with, since we haven't been able to really get student teaching up off the ground in the last session or so. I suspect that it'll probably be up for legislative consideration again this year, paid student teaching, but this is not paid student teaching. It's paying for the semester fees and tuition of student teaching.
Has it ever been considered to recruit, let's say, 30 to 50 aspiring educators and pay for their degree fully instead of supplement part of it? Just get a rock star team that wants to go through their whole degree and maybe even a shortage area cross endorsement and build a team that way. Just curious about your thoughts on that.
Is that a question for me or for SDE?
I would say for anybody. And I guess I'm just
okay.
questioning
Sorry.
like the data of the results of this program, and if we have to tweak the program to perhaps either, cast a wider net or make sure people get to the finish line, or make sure we're also covering the shortage areas that we so desperately need to fill, and maybe fully investing in future educators with one-time kind of huge lottery ticket per se, to be fully supported to become teachers with cross endorsements. I'm just curious if there's an interest in that, or if that might be able to help people see the finish line. Catherine, go ahead.
I think Jocelyn had her hand up first.
I'm sorry, I didn't see you down. And go ahead, Jocelyn.
That's okay. That could be a pretty strong can of worms in terms of, equity and who has access to that and what parameters we'd put in place to. I mean, that's a pretty hefty scholarship for somebody to go through their program, unless we were saying it was just for the student teaching semester, in which case I think we're all supportive of, how do we get that paid student teaching? But we have so many significant programs that are allowing for access. I think, we can't forget or discredit the apprenticeship program that I think is a really strong program in terms of ensuring, the ed prep programs participation, union participation, administrator and school district and board of ed kind of mindset of the type of skill sets and quality that they're looking for, and especially in shortage areas and different spaces. So I think we could have a deeper dive into the pathways and, how we make sure that we're removing the barriers and making access. But I think, limiting to a certain small group of people one particular benefit seems to me that it would cause maybe more problems than it would give access.
Thank you. Catherine?
Thanks, Jocelyn. We're on the same page. I think that the Aspiring Educator Scholarship is being massaged into something that really is going to work better. And so thank you, CSDE, for that. I will tell you, and yes, the apprenticeship is a great opportunity. You'd be surprised how many students are not applying for it, though, right? We still need to get those shortage folks, we need to recruit them. And the fact that we have an apprenticeship model, the fact that we have residencies or the aspiring educators, that's not getting them in the door, right? We have these, and it's still not, it's not the recruitment answer that I was looking for, right? I don't know what it is yet. I'm still looking for that recruitment, for that magic bullet, but I think it helps. But I don't think it's offsetting the shortage area the way that I had hoped, or even our recruitment the way that I had hoped. So I just wanted to add that piece.
Thank you. Jocelyn?
Yeah, sorry, just thinking about it from the recruitment standpoint, I think the aspect of access to the certification and the space is one area. I think if we dug deep into why some of those shortage areas exist, it's not necessarily in the certification process. It might be in the conditions of the teaching and the work that they're doing and what they're being asked for in those spaces. I'm thinking particularly in special education. And that's not maybe the purview of this specific body, right? In terms of what the work looks like once you're in those spaces versus the access to getting the certification and the qualifications that you need for that space. So I do think those are two separate conversations, the access and ability to become part of it. And then what does that job look like once you're in it? So, people have to be motivated to get the certification to do the work in that space. And I do think that that's maybe digging deep into why the shortage areas are shortage areas is not necessarily work that this body and this task force can be really focusing on. That might be other spaces.
Thank you. Shauna?
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up on Kate's comment. We would really appreciate it, Kate, for you and any other EPPs that are on. If you hear feedback from students, we would love to know why students are not interested in taking advantage of the opportunities for apprenticeships. I mean, you get paid for the whole year, your senior year. You get paid a nice amount. And we have expanded. We have the money from the governor that was given to us, the $2 million. And right now we're more than half full, but we still have about 20 to 25 more slots that we could fill. And, it is the partnership between the university, the school district, and the student. And we're happy with where we are, but we still have some spots that we would like to fill because our goal, of course, is to expend all of those funds. We really don't want to turn over or have leftover funds to give back to the state. And we even upped the ante this year so that the district had less of a burden for their out-of-pocket expenses with the students. So we've seen an increase, but we're trying to get to that finish line to actually have like 60 to 65. And what we have built in is we've built in a tool to help us with our tracking and our data collection of the program, because that's very, very important to us. So any insight or feedback that you have, because we really would like to know from the EPP side, how is this being marketed to the students from the EPPs? Because we feel that that's also a disconnect, because we would be happy to speak to the students, have a presentation, but normally that recruitment is done at the EPP level, not so much at our level.
Agreed, agreed.
Thank you. Dr. Tucker, do you believe this $3 million is bucketed in the right program, or should those dollars be spread to different programs? Do you have any gut feeling about that?
Are you speaking of the apprenticeship money?
I'm thinking of the money for aspiring educators. Like, if there is a surplus all the time and we're not really sure why, do you have any idea of maybe why there is a surplus, and should monies be maybe allocated to the apprenticeship program instead, or to just paying the student teaching costs of the coursework at the time? Like, is there another solution for why we're giving money back each year?
Well, I think the main reason why we're giving money back is how this legislation was written from the beginning, because it was only limited to students who graduated from Alliance school districts. And we've had to then kind of change the mindset after having that been what was legislated for 2 years, to now come back and you're trying to say, oh, now it's open to everybody. So we've even stepped up our game on how do we get the information out to communicate that this is now open to everyone, not just students from Alliance school districts. And here we go again, because the legislation from this session now put back in the words underrepresented groups and shortage areas, which we now have to figure out how are we then going to. For me personally, not speaking as CSDE, but for me personally, that's another barrier to what it is that we were trying to do. So we go from Alliance districts, now we go to everybody, and now we have to figure out how do we now target this and meet the legislative requirement of targeting shortage areas and underrepresented groups. And when you look at our data and our numbers in Connecticut, we're doing the best we can to get the word out, but we don't have hundreds of people knocking down the doors trying to go into EPP programs. So I think most people who want to go in, they receive the information and they do apply. We have a very, very low number of applicants who don't meet the criteria. I mean, very low, very low. So our numbers are coming up and we're seeing them coming up, which is great. But again, we're not seeing thousands of people entering our profession. And I think we have to be honest about that as well. I mean, we're trying that with our pipeline and we are seeing those numbers go up, but it's not going to happen in a very short period of time. And, for the apprenticeship portion, we did receive the additional funds of the 2 million. So we're really focused on that pot solely for apprenticeship, not mixing it with the scholarship. And we also would like to expand apprenticeship in other areas. So we have applied for a federal grant. We're hoping that that will come through, because that will then open up the opportunity for looking at apprenticeship beyond just teaching, but into some other specialty areas.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Jocelyn?
I just have a process question. Are we going to move to recommend one of these 3 options and then discuss it? Or are we going to keep discussing specifically the differences between these 3 options?
I think anyone can make a motion if they'd like to make a motion for one specific one that speaks to them, and then the board can have discussion around it and decide whether they want to move forward with that one or a different one. That's what typically I, as the maker, will not be making the motion.
I will make a motion. This is Cynthia. I will make a motion for approval for any coursework and fees to colleges during a growing educator's journey to become certified for their student teaching be paid through these funds.
I
hope
second.
Thank you. I'm sorry, who seconded?
Elsa?
Elsa, thank you. So could we have discussion around that thought, please? Jocelyn?
It's hard for me to, I feel like we have three options on the table that were very clearly defined and written. So I feel stronger. I would prefer maybe speaking specifically to one of the ones that's written down so that we have a little bit of a stronger conversation around it. Or if we could see that motion in writing, that would be helpful.
Sure, I understand. I'm gonna kick it back to Jen Rodriguez. Jen, could you read the exact language you proposed for the payment of coursework for the student teaching time, please? I
So two things
apologize.
that-
Yeah, go ahead.
Sure. Two things I just need to double check with Karen on. I don't know that as the acting chair, if a motion can be made by the acting chair, usually it has to be made by somebody else in the group. And yeah, so I just need Karen to let me know because I just want to make sure that whatever we're doing that it doesn't get challenged later on. So if Karen can speak to that.
Probably it would be someone other than the acting chair because she's acting on your behalf. So it should be some other board member making that motion just to avoid any appearance of, impropriety or not adhering to the Robert's Rules of Order. So if someone else can make that motion, some other board member, it would be preferable.
All right, I found it in larger terms, and I apologize, I don't have my glasses on at the moment. May I try this again to read from the proposal? Making a motion. Hang on one second. Here it is between screens. So I believe what I'm trying to say is on Jen's draft, and it's in the agenda in larger terms if you're struggling to see it on the screen like I am. So I believe it is the section that is labeled E for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2027, and each fiscal year thereafter, the commissioner shall determine whether there are any unexpended funds appropriated for the purpose of this section. If the commissioner determines that unexpected funds remain after all scholarship obligations under the section has been satisfied, the commissioner may, not later than July 15th of each fiscal year, use such unexpended funds to provide grants to students enrolled in the required full-time clinical experience, including the student teaching semester of an improved educator preparation program in the state in accordance with guidelines developed by the commissioner in consultation with the certification, Connecticut Education Preparation Certification Board.
So option 3?
Yes.
Option 3.
So can I move that so that Cynthia, as chair, I'll move that Jocelyn Delancey?
Yes, thank you. Discussion?
I think we need a second.
Patrice, second.
Thank you, Patrice.
Perfect. Now we're on a roll.
Dr. Tucker?
Thank you, Cynthia.
Yes, so since we're in discussion now, just two things for consideration. You may want to consider an amount for the student teaching. And secondly, I would say consider the fact that how will we handle if there is a student who already receives the Aspiring Educator Scholarship? So would you be paying them a stipend on top of the scholarship since the scholarship goes to the school? I mean, I'm just throwing this out for discussion for us to think through.
Thank you. I'm hearing there
Mm-hmm.
may need to be some more operational procedures under any one of the ideas, which is fair.
So can I actually present a working document so that I can like add any notes that might come up as part of this, as opposed to the one that's on the screen right now? So Karen, if you want to stop sharing, I'll share the working document and then I can kind of just add any notes along the way and capture that. Okay, so
Jen,
we are
should-
focused
Jen.
in on, yeah.
Can we have Karen take notes as it's your proposal?
But she doesn't have access to the doc. And this would just be me adding notes into the side. And then once you guys say yes or no, then I can just hand that over to Karen to amend afterwards. But it's just to ensure that we have like a working document to look from. The original document's still the original document. This is if we're going to propose anything, I can add it in there. So for example, the June 30th, 2027 probably should actually be changed to 2028 because we're in the 2027 fiscal year right now. So when we're thinking ahead, I would probably need an amendment to change that all to 2028. My bad.
Thank you. Sarah?
Thank you. I had now that I'm doing a closer read, I had a couple of clarifying questions, and I'm not sure if we've talked about it in a previous meeting or if the state could answer it, but I'm curious as to how many aspiring educators, do we have a number over a 3-year period? How many people have actually taken advantage of it?
Yeah,
we do. Oh, and I'm thinking about what Catherine said about, making students aware that this is available to them. And I'm just thinking about, do we know how many students it could be available to versus how many are available to them? Versus how many have taken advantage of it. So I'll stop there if you have an answer to how many students have taken advantage of the Aspiring Educator Scholarship Program.
Sure, we just had this question last week. Since the inception of the scholarship, and it's only been around 3 years, we have awarded 420 scholarships totaling $2,065,692.60 since 2023, and this started in January.
So that's that's $1 million left over, more or less. Well, no, because it's 3 million for how many years?
It's 4 million
year.
every year.
It's 4 million every year. Mm-hmm. Yep.
And we're sending back approximately 3 million every year.
Yeah, I don't want to do that. So how do we, I don't know if there's, in thinking about it, do we widen the pool of what defines an aspiring educator? I don't know. I'm just kind of thinking about that, but that data is very helpful. Thank you.
And that is why I do believe we're going to have a really good turnout of people applying for the scholarships for this semester, because it's open to, there are no, there are, as I said, they started with Alliance districts. Now it's open to all students. Remember, it was also started, it was for students of color. It's no longer students of color. It's open to everyone. So I'm curious to see this semester, now that it's open to everyone, how many more applicants are we going to receive this semester, since it is now open to everyone? But again, my concern is the language that was put in this past session, going back to underrepresented groups and shortage areas that we're going to have to address in the spring.
And so in the language of the 3 choices, have we changed the definition of aspiring educator then? Was I not paying close attention to that?
No, so we've maintained the original language. The only thing that we really amended in here, and I'm just kind of scrolling up through it. So everything in black is the original language as of this session that got passed this session. That language, and just cleaned up all the amendments so that you could see a solid document of what the final should really look like. And then I added in here procedures governing the use of any unexpected funds subject to E, and then provided 3 options for E. So the definition itself has not changed, and it's very new. So I'm not sure that the legislator would be really ready for us to change that definition. But the purpose of this was less about changing the definition and more about ensuring that the funds stay within the department and support the 6 through 16 pipeline. So that's really the purpose of this particular legislation amendment.
Yeah, okay, thank you. That's helpful. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Good questions. I appreciate it.
Margaret, do you mind if I keep jumping in here because I have a question for Shauna as an extension? Would that be okay with you?
Sure, I'll hold mine.
Thank you. Dr. Tucker, you'd spoken about how many students enrolled in the Aspiring Educators program. Could you also share the percentage of those that finish the program after enrolling and those that are currently employed and have maintained employment? Like basically, what is the success of the program to completion?
I would have to have my tech person pull a report. They are out right now on vacation, but we do have all of that data.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Margaret?
Thank you. So my first question was for Dr. Tucker around the number. Is that an unduplicated number, the 420 over the 3 years?
Yes.
Okay. And so our goal is roughly 266 students per year at the full 15,000 if we were trying to spend all. Okay, so just wanted to give some perspective about the 4 million. And then to your question about how much the student teaching should be, I would advise that we not list any of that and that level of detail would be at the department level. I feel like once we start putting in implementation details in here, you are stuck with it. And I know there are legal considerations, labor laws and financial aid considerations too, once you get into when someone's getting aid for student teaching and then they're getting paid for it. So I just recommend that we go as broadly as we can to give the department a lot of opportunity in here and not give you too many details. Thank you.
Jocelyn, go ahead.
Okay, so I think that this language in particular, after we amend, and I'll make a motion for that in a second, once I speak to this, the date to 2027, I think that this gives us the most, or not us, the commissioner and the State Department, the most level of flexibility with the funds to be able to gauge where the need is and then figure out how to get those funds to the spaces that need them. This doesn't prohibit it to just a shortage area or just a program. It opens it up for the State Department to make have a discussion and make decisions on how those funds get reallocated. It keeps the funds within the purview of the cause that we're kind of trying to utilize the funds for. And I think that this is out of the 3 options that we have in front of us, this is the one that gives the most flexibility and allows for us to really move forward with a consistent practice. And then if we want to dig deeper into other programming and other options and other scholarships, we can think about it, but this money's here, it exists, and it's limited in its nature right now. This allows for that money to be used in a broader sense and to allow for the commissioner and the State Department to kind of understand where the need is and make decisions on how they can allocate that funding, whether it be to paid student teaching, whether it be to some of the residency programs, or whatever it is that we're working towards that need the funds. So I like this option the best. And then I would make a motion to amend the language to June 30th, 2028.
Thank you. So there's a motion on the floor to amend the date of this section of the language. Is there a second?
Second, Patrice.
Thank you, Patrice. Further discussion? Jen, you had your hand up. Do you want to say anything?
No, I had my hand up for discussing or furthering something that Jocelyn had said, but I'll let you go through this process first and then I can
Okay.
share that.
Malia, did you want to say something?
I may be out of the Roberts rules for just a moment. I thought I heard somebody also mentioning about not necessarily listing specifics. Are we just moving to just amend the date at the moment and thinking about removal of any sort of language that gets too in the specifics? Are those separate, or are we doing that together? Does that make sense?
It does.
think, Jocelyn, do you want to speak? Like, I think that she said just to change the date. I don't think that she said anything else.
I only moved to change the date, so that motion is on the floor. So unless somebody makes a motion to amend that motion, we would have discussion on changing the date and vote on that, and then move back to the regular discussion.
Thank you.
Dr. Rowe?
Are we at a discussion point about this? I'd like to talk a little bit about the value of changing the date. I mean,
Yes, you may discuss that before we close it up and vote.
thank you, Dr. Ritchie. I am not sure of what the added value is in moving the date out to the 28th. I mean, we need to make some changes to support this program, and I think that pushing it out to I don't know that added value in doing that. So, and I'm just really I'm asking questions, so maybe someone can let me in on that.
I can speak to that if you'd like, Dr. Ritchie.
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. So what I was told was I kept the original 2027 language, which is in the current legislation, because it's talking about the current year that we're in after they've passed it. So if we're getting this to be looked at in 2027, it would be the fiscal year ending in 2028 because we're already in the fiscal year for 2027 is what I was told. So that's why that part would have to change.
I have a sorry, but Jen, if the funds are already allocated, this doesn't change the allocation of the funds, so it wouldn't change the budget as I'm thinking about it. So it would just change how the SDE uses that money for this, like, it would allow for them on June 30th, 2027 to start reallocating funds if at that time people don't. So I actually maybe would withdraw my motion.
Good point. Good point. Thank
Dr.
you,
Rowe.
Kathy.
My question is directed to Dr. Tucker. Dr. Tucker, do you see any rationale in moving the date out to the 28th, or can we leave it the 27th? What is your thoughts on that?
I have no problem with the date. My concern is the fiscal year ends on that date. I need to know months before what my balance is to get those funds out the door. Because if I have to wait till June 30th, we lose the funds. Because my new allocation comes July 1, if you're following what I'm saying. So we would have to disperse scholarships, which we do in the spring, and have the money out of the door by March. And it would be a very quick turnaround from March. And technically we have to have everything done by May. So between March and May to then determine how much we would have left to then try and get that money out the door within a 60-day window.
And then you have to think about the legislative session too, right? And when they're going to approve this by, and if you need that months in advance, that's not going to line up.
That is my biggest concern. I mean, the intent of what you're trying to do, I fully support that. I'm just thinking about it from a timeline standpoint with processing to get that money out the door to the needed students.
Margaret?
Yeah, so my question is on the timeline also, because then later it says not later than July 15th of such fiscal year. And so I'm not sure that the whole timeline is making any sense in here. If you're committing funds in the spring of that fiscal year, right? Is that what you're saying? In March, you're committing the current fiscal year's funds.
Yeah, that's my last commitment, that spring. So we have to have pretty much everything expended once we pay out in March to the EPPs for scholarships.
So what is the
So-
July 15th in here then?
That's when you have to return funds. So previously, the aspiring educators had to have had everything in by, and allocated by June 30th. And then by July 15th of that same fiscal year, the commissioner would have to write off anything that was still left over directly back to the general fund. So that July 15th still sits in there to align with what was already in legislation, that we will still adhere to the letter of the law in terms of the initial intent of the aspiring educator scholarship, that it's being given out to folks who are underrepresented or whatever the commission decides is going to be the criteria for the coming year. And then on July 15th, whatever is left after that date would then open up for these other items that the funds could be used for, as opposed to sending them back to the general fund. So it's just using the same dates that were already there.
Right. So we're making sure this money carries forward and is not returned. So it needs approval to carry it forward into another fiscal year for use, because then you're using one fiscal year's funds in the next fiscal year. Okay. I just wanted to make sure we were clear on that, because it'll be carrying over from fiscal year to fiscal year. And I just wondered if an alternative would be that there could be up to an amount that is used for the other activities as identified in 3E, right? So we could say up to 3 million on the scholarships and up to $1 million, because if you can use that within the year for planning and you're actively moving that money along, that might be more helpful for what you've been talking about than having to wait to see what's unspent, make the plan.
Margaret, you get it. You understand the position that we are in when it comes to the funding cycle here, because I was going to suggest that maybe by January 1 to have some type of a determination to see what would be left, or as you say, a specific amount that we could then use, because that then gives us from January to May to be able to expend those funds.
Okay. So I feel like we're down the right path, but we're just taking a minute to take a stop and say, maybe we just reframe this a little bit to give that flexibility.
And there is a January 1st date in there under G, that's original language. So there is already a date with a specific expectation for that date.
Well, we have to do that anyway. So the report, we start working on the report actually in October, November. We have to have it upstairs by November. So we already have to do the report. So that's fine, but I do think we need to think about the date, because we're going to need more time if you really want us to be able to expend those funds before the end of the year.
Yeah, in a meaningful way that doesn't kill your staff trying to spend down without sending back. Yeah.
Correct.
Right.
Thank you.
Dr. Rowe?
So then could we possibly amend although Jocelyn rescinded her amendment, can we amend for the fiscal year ending or beginning January 1, 2028? Dr. Tucker, does that work? And then that gives you that time between January 1st?
That would definitely give us time, because then we would know how much is kind of left. We could then allocate, well, how many applications we have coming into date, and at least an amount to say, well, we will probably have an approximate figure here that we will have left over that we can actually use. That would be helpful.
Would anyone like to make a motion capturing that suggestion regarding the date?
So I can make a different motion, which would be to table this until our next meeting so that the SDE and the maker can kind of review this and make sure that the dates make sense for everything and all the processes so that we don't have to come back to the table if it's unclear. I feel like it might need a little bit more time, and we probably have more to discuss today.
Thank you, Jocelyn. Is there a second for tabling this?
Second, Gustafson.
Second.
Thank you. So on the table and seconded is a request to table this. I think we're ready for a vote. All those in favor of tabling this until the next meeting to review again, please raise your hand. Thank you. Please remove your hands. Anyone opposed to tabling? Please raise your hand. Okay, so if I'm looking at hands correctly, we have two opposed to tabling. Is that correct?
Looks correct to me.
Okay.
I am not opposed to tabling, but the button to lower my hand is not
it just works.
letting me do
Okay.
that. Okay.
Okay, thank you. And any abstentions? Okay, so Patrice, I think you voted to table, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. All right. Thank you, everybody. The motion carries. More work will be done on this behind the scenes. And anyone is welcome to contribute to, continued ideas and sharing through Karen and the chair, Jen. And we will see this again for discussion at the next meeting. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Cynthia, and thank you for managing all of this and being the acting chair while I brought those forward. I appreciate that. Thank you very much in your vice chair role. So thanks for the discussion. I think there's plenty to talk about. I appreciate the opportunity to also think about what Dr. Tucker had said earlier about making sure the language is clear, that there wouldn't be like a double dipping is what I was hearing in terms of that. So I will definitely schedule a meeting with Dr. Tucker to see if we can kind of take a deeper look at this and see what we can move forward for the next meeting with some potential newer updated version of it for us to ponder. I just want to make sure that I'm clear though. So we're going to be working on option 3. Yes? Is that what the one the board liked the most? Because I don't think we actually voted officially that we liked option 3 the most, and to work from that one as the working language.
It's my understanding that's what it was. If you want to have an official vote on what's on the screen now, we could do that if you think it's needed.
I mean, I leave it to the board. I'm okay with us going with the option because that's the one that we discussed the most, and it seemed like there was the most interest involved in that one. And then if anybody wants to make motions at the next meeting on what they might want to add to it, but the updated document that I will provide to the board will have option 1 and 2 removed from it, just to make it a clean document. Is anybody opposed to that? Okay, perfect. All right, I will go ahead and take care of that part of it, and we will meet, Dr. Tucker and I. We have a meeting in our future. All right, so what we have left is to go back to our presentation and kind of go over some questions. And I wanted to open this up and give the board an opportunity to share any priorities that their individual organizations might be coming forward with. That might be an opportunity for us to support, kind of like supporting some of the priorities for SDE that we were in agreement on as well. So if we wanted to take a moment to just go around for each organization, if you don't have one readily available, or and it doesn't have to be clearly defined, It could just be some things to think about and where we might want to weigh in. It's similar to what CEPRL did at their meeting in February, right? Dr. Ritchie, where they kind of just had people just say what their priorities were really quickly for their organizations for legislation or themes that they were looking into for their organizations.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So if we want to just kind of go around, and I will pull up the roster really quickly, or raise your hand if you want to go first, and just share what your organization might be thinking about in terms of priorities that we might be able to support in some way. You know, it's a little bit early. I think that some folks are still kind of hammering out what that might look like. But if there's any themes now, otherwise I can put it on the next meeting as well. Dr. Rowe, go ahead.
Things that AACTE Connecticut was talking about last spring was really organizing with the Office of Dyslexia and Reading Disabilities on what the program review is going to look like. That's coming up. We did talk about that at a recent meeting, but I do think that more work might, or this may need to be more publicized per se. So that's one piece of it that we've been talking about. We did meet with the office, like I said, the Office of Dyslexia and Reading Disabilities, and very helpful. They're willing to have folks at the table talk about it, but ultimately I think that it really originates here. So, and I think that we've already had some conversations about that. So I'm not sure, I don't want to make it an AACTE thing. I think it really does belong here at the certification board. I don't know how we do that. I don't know what that really looks like, but I do think that EPPs need to be involved in what that program review is going to look like, what we're already doing for program review, AKA self-studies for CAPE, and how we can align that documentation so that we're not doing separate self-studies for, and I just want to make sure that everyone is on the same page. So that is something that we did put out to our membership, and just wanted to bring that to everyone here. And I think you were copied on that, Jen. If you were not, I'll forward it to you. And then the other piece, the other thing that I had sent to Jen, which was something that we talked about with legislators, it's an unfunded mandate. We talk about shortage areas. We know that the paraprofessionals are really the folks that are, they're really out there, they're really doing the job, and they do want to do the job, and how they become teachers and how they become certified teachers is a challenge, and removing those barriers, looking at what that's going to look like. We know that those are the folks that stay in the field. They get a 70% retention rate. We don't have that with our new hire teachers. So one of the policy briefs that I brought forth, and I shared it with some of our legislators, was a paid leave for paraprofessionals. And I know that I did talk to Dr. Tucker about it. We did talk about maybe moving the apprenticeship in that area, but unless you are involved with an apprentice, a registered apprenticeship, if I have someone who said, hey, I want to be a paraprofessional, move into be student teacher, and I'm going to work this out with my district, they can't do that if that district is not involved with the apprenticeship as a registered apprenticeship. Just because we have an apprenticeship doesn't mean they could say, hey, I'm an apprentice. It doesn't work like that, right? There's a process with the DOL that has to happen. So I'm wondering if we can possibly have some more flexibility in that space. I'm not talking about general. I'm talking about very specifically for special education paraprofessionals moving to be certified special educators. I sent a policy brief over. I think I shared it with you, Jen. I sent it with to Jen Leeper, Senator Brothel, Senator Getto Wilcox. So a few folks had it in their hands last spring. Again, unfunded mandate. It didn't go anywhere, but I did want to put it on the table here, how we could massage it, what we can make it look like to provide to Jocelyn's point, removing the barriers and providing more accessibility for that demographic. So that was just something else that AACTE was looking at. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And I think that SDE had some ideas around para educators as well. So there might be some